Good morning. How are you today? Wonderful. I am Linda Williams of In Person Away Virtual Events, where we use robots and other technology platforms to help people be in two places at the same time. I am extremely excited to be here with you today to talk about what do you do when you lose. I do have a couple of disclaimers. The first one is because I'm so passionate about this topic, I may tend to step outside of the common vernacular when I'm speaking. I'm from New Orleans, so you might hear some of that come out as well. Fair warning. Secondly, I'm going to ask you to participate. So I hope you weren't expecting to come in and just sit down and watch me talk and go through slides. You're going to participate with me and help me make this presentation. So the very first thing I'd like for you to do is take out your mobile device or whatever it is that you use, cell phone, tablet, what have you, and I'd like you to hold it up for me. All right, thank you, very good. Two things I'd like you to do with that. First thing is make sure it's on silent or vibrate. Thank you very much. And the second thing is open whatever note-taking application you use. And I would like for you to record any key learnings or key insights that you find there in the app. I'd also like for you to record any questions that you might have. I'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation, but you may have some as we go throughout. So with that in mind, I'll tell you a little bit about this situation and me coming to speak. I saw the announcement and I said, hey, what the heck, I'll fill out the application to speak, no big deal. So I did. And as I was going through the application, about halfway through, they asked a question about the topic. They said, I gave them the topic, what do you do when you lose? And a little bit after that, they said, well, what qualifies you to talk about this topic? Fair question, I thought. So the first thing I did think, though, was I was being pranked. I'm like, what do I know about losing? What are my credentials when it comes to losing? And I said, well, they don't really know me, so surely they're not pranking me. So then my next step was to go down and look at the character limits to see if I could really list all of my credentials. Wasn't enough space. So I decided to use bullet points. And the bullet points I used were these. The first one was, well, I survived Hurricane Katrina with 3 days worth of clothes, the vehicle I was driving in, and my mother and my daughter. Everything else I owned in New Orleans, Louisiana, as of August 29, 2005, was gone, job included. So that was one. The second thing was foreclosure. I bought a beautiful home that I just fell in love with. Life happened, and I lost it. Then I had one that was a toss-up. I got divorced. And I said, well, is that a loss? Is it a win? And I kind of vacillated between the two, and I landed on loss, but it was for him, not me. So obviously, they felt like those credentials were sufficient because here you are, and here I am. And what I want to share with you is basically, when we become entrepreneurs, we do it because there's something that we just feel like we want to do, and we've seen other people be successful at it, and we can do it. We can do it. But guess what? It doesn't happen overnight. So we see the cars and the homes and the trips, and we think instantly, entrepreneurship, that's what's for me. That's what I'm going to have. And it does not happen that way. And what happens to us? What do we do? So today, what I'd like to do is see if I can get my clicker to work first. Well, that's why we have Plan B. Is tell you a little bit about what we're going to what we're going to do today, what we're going to talk about today in the time that we have together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the objectives for the session, and they are, we're going to define loss in its simplest form, just basically what a loss is. We're also going to explore some perspectives of loss. And lastly, we're going to implement some techniques that will help us manage and thrive through loss. And for me, when I think of loss, I don't necessarily think of materialistic things like my home, my car. When I think of loss, I think about time. I think about resources. I think about hope. I think all of those things can be encapsulated within the definition or the concept of loss. So, with that in mind, I'd like for us to, for consistency purposes and for remaining within the context of why we're here, use a working definition for loss. So, what is a loss as defined within the confines of this presentation? It is when our experience does not match our desired or anticipated expectation. When you're looking for one thing and you get another. When you put in the bid on the contract, you've done all the work and all the research, you know that you should have gotten it, it's yours, and it's not. You were in the pitch contest. You made sure your presentation dotted every I, crossed every single T there was, but you lost. What do you do? What do you do when you lose? What do you do? What do you do when you apply for an EIDL loan and you submit everything you need to submit, and on a Friday evening, a few months later, you get an approval, and they said, you got it, just waiting on your closing documents. It's late Friday, so you don't worry about it then. But by Monday, you don't have the closing documents. Oh, and by the way, this is my story. So you call, and you say, okay, I'm all excited. I've been excited all weekend. I got this approval, but I don't have my closing documents, and I'm ready to sign them. Can you send them to me? Oh, Miss Williams? Yeah, me, Miss Williams, in-person away virtual events. That's me. We had to rescind your approval. What? She said, we had to rescind your approval, your approval. We had to deny you. So I said, why? Why on earth did you have to do that? Well, according to our records, prior to preparing the closing documents, your information came up on the DMF list. Do you all know what the DMF list is? I'm getting ready to tell you, because I didn't know either. I said, the DMF list? She said, yes, ma'am, the DMF list. I said, but what is that? She said, it's the Death Master File. I said, Miss, are you telling me I'm dead? And she said, well, yeah, I kind of am. I said, but I'm talking to you. And she said, I know, but this is where we are. My experience did not match my expectation. I was devastated. So I went through all the reconsideration stuff they told me to do, and I sent them my blood type, I sent them my first EKG, I sent them my passport, I sent them everything they asked for. I mean, they didn't ask for the blood stuff, I'm only kidding with that. But I sent them everything they asked for. And finally, at the end of April of this year, they said, we got it, we got it. And then the first week in May, they ran out of funding. What do you do when you lose? What do you do? What do you do? For me, My hopes were dashed. I was thinking my business was on life support and this was going to resuscitate it. And I found that I had to be resurrected instead before any of that could happen. So what do? When it comes to our expectations not being met by our experiences, there is one thing that we must do first, and that is change the lens through which we look at that experience. We must change our perspective. So, when I say that, I'm speaking to each of you as individuals in the field in which you operate. We must change the lens through which we look at our unmet expectation because we are extraordinary. Our concepts are extraordinary. No one will ever see it the way we see it. The impetus behind what we do is extraordinary. So we have to see it through a different lens. Now, I need some help. I told you all earlier that I was going to need some help. So I need one volunteer. I usually say victim, I'm proud of myself. I need one volunteer. Who will that be? Thank you. Would you mind coming up, please? Oh, you thought you were going to volunteer from your seat? Not in my presentation.
No, I got to turn this thing off.
Dave, weren't you supposed to do that earlier?
Well, I'll turn it back on.
Okay, okay. So Dave is going to help me with this perspective change because I know personally it's difficult to change. For example, right now if I asked you all to fold your arms, and I'm going to ask you, fold your arms for me. Now fold them the other way. Nobody struggled. That's the first time I've done that. But usually people struggle trying to figure out the other way because I'm asking them to change what they would normally do. So Dave is going to help me demonstrate a change in perspective. Dave, would you please read that for me?
Mr. Snakes, Mr. Knot. That's a funny name. Asar something. Live, Mr. Snakes.
Okay. Would you all agree that he read that okay? So what if I told you that those were really not sentences, that they were a dialogue occurring between two people? What would you think about that? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the dialogue as it should go, and then I'm going to read the green part, and Dave is going to read the other part the second time around. So, here we go.
Hello.
MR Snakes.
Mr. Knot.
MR Not. OSAR. CMEDPDIs. LIB. MR Snakes. Now let's try it. You got it? This is your part.
MR Snakes.
Okay, so we're going to take it from the top. You ready to take it from the top? Yeah. MR Snakes.
MR Knot.
OSAR. CMEDPDIs.
Lib MR Snakes.
LIB.
What is Lib MR Snakes?
It's LIB, like, well, I'll be.
Oh, LIB. LIBMR. See, lib is actually an abbreviation for liberal, and yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So it's a conversation. Well, I be MR Snakes. All right, so thank you so much. So did you all see the change in perspective because we put on a different lens? Well, thank you so much, Dave, for participating. And guess what we're about to do now? Take that. We're all going to demonstrate a change in perspective. So here's how we're going to do it. Ladies, Since we always write, we're going to read the we're going to read the part in green. Gentlemen, you all will read the part in orange, rust, what have you. So are we ready? I'm going to run through it one time, and then we'll do it ladies and gentlemen, okay? So, M-R ducks, M-R not, O-S-A-R, C-M wangs, L-I-B, M-R ducks. All right, we ready to run through it? Ladies first. 1, 2, 3. Gentlemen. M-R ducks. So it's just a change in perspective. And you see how quickly it was able to happen because you allowed it. It was a change in perspective because once you saw it through a different lens, you not only could comprehend it, but you could demonstrate it. And so that's what we do when we lose. That's one of the things. We put on a new set of glasses. We change the lens through which we see that expectation and that experience. If there is no one else that knows about failure, knows losing, I would definitely say it is this gentleman. His name, of course, Thomas Edison, the creator, founder of General Electric. When he did his very first light bulb, did you know that he did not get the expected volume of purchase that he wanted in homes? He could have stopped and said, you know what? This idea was bad. It didn't work. And stop. But where would we be today? His perspective changed. He said, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Isn't that amazing? I usually stop around 3 or 4. I'm a little bit better now. I can go up to 10, maybe 15. But 10,000 ways that didn't work. How can you do something, make those kinds of attempts 10,000 times and not get the expectation you want? I'll talk about that a little bit later. The first thing we need to do is know what our no really is. Because no's mean different things. But throughout life, we have just been taught that no is no. We don't know the underlying reasons. And sometimes when our parents tell us no, it's just no because I said no. I'm a grandmother and a mother, and so I've done that before. But when it comes to being an entrepreneur and the experiences that we have, it's a little bit different. So we have to know the no that we're getting, and therefore basic no's. The first one is what we just talked about. Just no. No. But what does that really mean? It's an objection. And anyone who has done anything with sales knows about objections. What do you know about objections when a customer has an objection?
Gives me they haven't given the right answer.
Okay, anything else? They haven't given them the right answer. What else when you're overcoming an objection? Why do customers have objections? There's a question that perhaps hasn't been answered. There may be an underlying concern that hasn't been expressed. And so when it comes to overcoming or handling objections, we've been trained on that. You know, we've been given examples on how to do that, so we can pretty much overcome an objection if that's the case. But what happens when it's this one? When the no is really not ready. You're not ready for the circumstance. You're not ready for the situation. Who was ready for a pandemic? My robots operate in social environments. They go to weddings, they go to funerals, they go to parties. So what happens when you shut down event venues? I wasn't ready. So I was redirected. So we have objection and redirection. In business today, we call it pivot. So I pivoted my business model to begin doing robots that checked your temperature, dispensed hand sanitizer, and based on what your temperature was or what have you, you could gain entry into a facility. So sometimes we get a no because we're just not ready. Other times we get a no because the person, the company, the client isn't ready. Maybe they don't have the funding at the moment. Maybe they don't have the right decision makers in place yet. But whatever the case is, we have to take a new direction. The next one. What happens when we get a no? Back here. What happens when we get a no and there's no explanation? What happens when we get a no and there's nobody to ask why? Whenever that happens, I feel like I'm just being rejected. How? What do you mean no? Why? What didn't I do? I need to know something. Sometimes the program or the project or the contract has secretly already been awarded. It happens. Sometimes you don't have the right look. That happens. I've been told that as a full-figured, curvy African-American woman, I should not be the face of my company in technology. I said, well, if this company is going to have a face, it's going to be this one. And if this company is going to have a body, it's going to be this one. Sometimes it's just not the right look, and it's rejection. And then the last no is one of protection. And those are the no's that we really don't understand no's. I'll give you an example of something that happened to me very early in my career. I was working at one of the second largest bank in New Orleans, Louisiana, or in Louisiana, period. And it was my first real job as an adult. I was working in customer service. And so there were two customer service departments. There was one for credit cards, and there was another one for demand deposit accounts, which would be checking and savings. And when I got my paperwork, it said credit card. But when I got to the department, they said, no, you're supposed to be with DDA, demand deposit accounts. And I was like, no, that's not where I'm supposed to be. They don't make as much money. Yeah, this is not right. Something's wrong with this. Anyway, I tried to fight it, but ultimately I had to stay in DDA if I wanted a job. So I did. 6 months later, the entire credit card department was sold, and those people were laid off. So that no, that rejection was really protection. It was protecting my income. It was protecting me. And sometimes we get those when we, are like, well, that just didn't make sense. I mean, I did everything right. They seem like the perfect client. Enron. What if you had a contract with them? Where would you be? So sometimes when we look at a no, it could just be a form of protection. So through the lens of a new perspective, when we get a no from now on, we can see it as an objection, we can see it as rejection, we can see it as redirection, or we could see it as protection. The choice and the power rests in us. Now, what I'd like to do is I want to share something with you. I'm going to show you a video. This is a video by a French dancer slash choreographer, and his name is Johan Bourgeois. And the piece that I'm getting ready to show to you is called Celui qui tombe. And it translates in English from French to the one who falls. Now, as you watch this video, I want you to think about your entrepreneurial journey. I want you to see if there are any key insights that you can pull from what you're about to watch. Any key observations about what you're about to see. And then we're going to talk about those observations. So I present to you Monsieur Bourgeois and Celui qui tombe. And why isn't it playing? Is there some reason why this video would not play? It's YouTube, so. Let's see. I think, I need to see if I did that, if I did connect. Because if I did not, then that's a problem. Nope, I don't think I did. Let's see. Is it an open network? Yeah. So while he's getting the Wi-Fi, we'll go back to.
What no are we looking at now? Was this no protecting you?
Say it again.
What no is this right now? Is this a protection?
This no is. Yeah, I wasn't ready. That's what this one is. This one is a not ready. Because no matter how much I prepared, how much I hit that button, I did not connect to the Wi-Fi. And that, you're right, that's a great question. And it happens. And I'm going to recover from it. That's the most important thing. So I don't want to give that away. I really don't want to give that away. I want to move on to just another.
You want a filler question?
Yes, please.
Can you tell a little bit about your journey of how you ended up here, your role, and a little bit about your robotic company?
Oh, absolutely. So my journey was a 23-hour drive that would normally take 6. We left before the storm hit, but the traffic was really horrendous. So we drove 23 hours to get to Texas, Houston. And when we got to Houston, we were only supposed to be there for 3 days. The storm wasn't supposed to be that bad. And I kept CNN on in the hotel room. And so like Tuesday morning, I think it was, or Monday morning, I woke up hearing 80% of New Orleans is underwater. And I didn't see it, I just heard it like in my sleep. So I'm thinking I'm dreaming, so let me get up, rub my eyes, I look at the television, and the graphic on the screen is the gas station down the street from my office, and the water is up to the sign that tells you how much the gas is. In that one image, I knew that I lost everything I had ever owned. I knew that my job was gone because it was a block away and the building was only 8 stories tall. I worked on the 4th floor. I knew that my home was gone because for it to get into the heart of the city, which we call the Central Business District, it had to pass my home to get there. I lived near the 17th Street Canal. So I had family here. I had my mother traveling with me. She was a little under the weather, and so they told us to come to St. Louis so that we could find a place. And that's it. It was my daughter's senior year of high school, and I saw her dropping. You know, she was like missing her friends and all of that. We couldn't go back home, so I had to plant here in St. Louis to get my daughter back on track and to try to get my life back on track. I had nothing to go back to. So that's my journey, and I'll be glad to tell you more about it after. The business was birthed because after Hurricane Katrina, my family was all over the country. And in December of 2014, I learned that I was going to become a grandmother in 2015. So I'm an instructional designer by trade, profession, and so I understand how to configure activities and create learning on using a plethora of media and engagement. So I put together a true to form virtual baby shower. The people could attend from wherever they were. We had a visual component, we had an audio component. The only thing they couldn't do was rub her belly and touch the food or eat the food. But they could participate in the games in real time. I reconfigured the games so they could be played on mobile devices and computers. I had prizes as soon as a person in the venue could claim their prize, a person who was participating virtually could claim theirs. And when it was over, I really just did it because I wanted my family together. I realized, how important family was. And then I said, after I came out of my stupor and was rejuvenated, I said, you know what? I can't be the only person in this predicament. As a matter of fact, I knew I wasn't because we had 250,000 people who did not return to New Orleans. And so I started creating templates for baby showers, bridal showers, birthdays, anniversaries, you name it. I created a template for it, and that's how it started. I started attending trade shows. I told somebody about it, my business, and the guy said, it would really be nice if the little thing rolled around. And I said, you're right, that would be nice. So I started working on my first robot. The name is Arrivé, which is French for to get there. And now I'm working with the University of Michigan's engineering department to upgrade her. So that's my journey. That's how I started, quite by accident. I have my little 7-year-old grandson to thank for that. But now I want to go ahead and show you this video so that were we able to get connected? Did I get connected? Is it? Okay, let's see. So the ask was that you take a look at this video, and as you look at it, think about your journey as an entrepreneur and identify any key learnings or key observations from the video. So this is where we were. Slideshow from current slide. Norton, I'm not ready for you. So let's see. It's not coming across on the. Can you just go to YouTube? I sure can. Let's pause it here. Because I really do want you to see this. So we're just going to go. YouTube. And we're going to do Yohan Bourgeois. And this is it. It's like it's not feeding the signal into the. Oh, actually, it sounds like it's playing. It's playing, but it's not showing on the screen. on the screen. It is playing, it's just not projecting. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Take a look at it and let me know what those observations are. So what do you think about that? What were your thoughts as you watched that video in light of your entrepreneurial journey? What observations did you make? What did you think about that video?
It's a lot of how it actually is to be a startup. I mean, you get up to a certain level and then you get knocked back and you've got to have the perseverance to keep going.
Okay.
And sometimes it's about when you get knocked down, sometimes you can come back on a higher step because you've pivoted or you've gotten additional support or resources or whatever. And it was interesting because doing the steps at the rather than the roller coaster, so to speak, at the end was kind of like, okay, now I'm actually in business, and now, okay, let me think about an exit strategy.
Yes, very good observations. Anybody else?
Sometimes they would actually not get back on the same step, but the previous step, but they still were able to get a little higher each time. Each time the trampolinist fell, they were able to get more momentum, especially when he was at the top there and he nearly lost it, but then he was able to gain more momentum and slowly get to the top.
Very
again.
good observation. Anybody else? Oh, I know you have one.
Everyone focused on the steps
Uh-huh.
of the bus.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't what caught my eye.
Okay.
It was a rotation.
Okay. Tell me
Well-
about it.
It's all cyclical. The steps will always be there. The challenge will always be there. Earth revolves at a set pace. What goes around comes around. And regardless of how you look at it, the same obstacles, the same issues will still be there. But if you also notice, it's not steps all the way around. You have shadows, you have blockage, you have darkness, you have light.
Excellent observations. Anyone else?
And ultimately, he got to the top by the steps. Ultimately, he didn't jump to the top.
He didn't know.
He didn't jump and stay. When he got to stay, it was because he went up the steps.
Well, those are all excellent observations. There was one that I was really looking for, though, that I have not heard. How many were there when they started? And how many were there when they finished?
There being steps, there being people
People.
Oh, the people. Yeah.
watching.
No, going on that staircase.
There were what, 5 or 6?
There were 4.
And then only one was left. To say others gave up.
There were 4 that started and only one that finished. Why do you think that happened? I watched them as they walked down. Some of them walked down with such, what's the word I'm looking for? They had just given up. They were like, I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of getting 2 steps up and then falling and having to start. I'm just sick of it. They were not with that new lens. They did not have that Thomas Edison, I've learned 10,000 ways that won't work. They stayed with it. And every time at the end, he went back up the stairs, he got a little more momentum. He didn't start falling quite as early as he had in the past. And then when he finally got to the top, he fell right off. Because once you make it, you still have to figure out how to keep it. So he comes down a few steps, and maybe he's not trying to think about the exit strategy right away. That's probably a part of it. But a part of it is like, I'm not back where I was, but I'm certainly not back up there where I want to be. What do I have to do to get there and stay there? What kind of mindset, what kind of strategies, plans, what do I have to have in place to do that? It gave him pause for thought. And as someone mentioned earlier, he was learning when he got to this last part. When he fell, if you watched, and I encourage you to go back again, it's YouTube. His name is Johan Bourgeois. This particular piece was done about 4 years ago, and it is called Celui qui tombe, the one who falls. His foot, he learned that if he would just push his foot up a little bit higher, if he took a little more risk, if he went out just a little more on a limb, he could get a little more bounce, and he could get back to where he was before. So I encourage you to go back and look at that again in light of your entrepreneurial journey. Ultimately, falling is not failing. Just as having a no is not really being fully rejected. No has many meanings, but they fit into one of four categories. A no can be an objection, a rejection, a redirection, or protection. I have a question for you I want you to ponder. What if those losses or the no's that we experience are really just masquerading as lessons? What if every time we experience something when our expectation does not meet with the experience, what if it's just dressed up as a lesson? What if we're constantly learning, constantly evolving to constantly become better entrepreneurs? A different lens, a different perspective. So let's talk about the answers. The question was, what do you do when you lose? And we talked about loss not just being materialistic, but it can be emotional, financial. First answer, examine the loss. Look at it. And I have a microscope here, because whenever we win something, we don't ever go back and really look at it. You know, we're like, oh yeah, we high five and we go celebrate. But it's rare that we go back and we see what really caused us to win. I'm from New Orleans, I already told you that, and we have a gumbo recipe from our family. And whenever you get to make the gumbo, it's a rite of passage. And so you have to do it right. And so you also can't use you can't use the good ingredients for your first gumbo. You got to go buy all the cheap stuff. You got to go buy the regular sausage, no andouille. You got to buy the frozen shrimp. You got to buy everything that you got to buy the frozen crabs. Everything that you would normally use in a fresh gumbo, you have to buy in a different form. And so when I got to do the gumbo, I was so excited. And my mother said, let's see what you got. And I'm making that gumbo. And I'm terrified because nobody else in my family has failed it the first time. I'm the youngest of 7. Here we go. So for years, I've watched my mother make this gumbo. And I've taken meticulous notes on her making that gumbo. And when it's my turn to make it, and I put the gumbo in the bowl, and I put the rice in the ramekin, and I sit it on top, and I sprinkle the parsley on it, and I bring it to my mother, and I say, okay, this is it. She takes it, she picks around in it to see what the seasonings are, and then she tastes it, and I'm holding my breath. And she says, you forgot the bay leaf. I said, what? You forgot the bay leaf. Everything else was fine, but I forgot the bay leaf. So what do I do now? I didn't get an A. I think that might have been like an A- or a B. But I went back and I reconfigured, because even though I didn't get an F, I wanted an A. So I had to go back and examine that loss. And the next time, I got the thumbs up, like my 6 siblings before me. So we have to examine our wins and examine our losses. Let's take a look at what that examination looks like. So in some cases, we always have to look over those things that are internal. What is it within me? What is it within my organization? What is it within my team that we can do better, or differently. External controls. What is it about the location? For me, I could have requested the Wi-Fi when I started signing up. That's one for me. But we need to look at those things over which we have control directly and those things over which we have no control. If the weather was bad, what would we do? Would we have a virtual setup ready to go? So those are the things that we have to look at, and we have to examine them all, whether we win or lose, whether we get a yes or a no. Because if you get a yes, then you want to examine it because you want to keep getting yeses, right? What could you have done differently or better? So examine the loss. Once you've examined the loss, extract the lesson. And there is a chart that I have that I will share with you. And it's as simple as sitting down with your team, going back over when I was doing it, we used to call them postmortems. But now we call them after action reviews or something like that. I guess I see why. But at any rate, it doesn't have to be complicated. You simply want to know what things do you need to stop doing, what things do you need to start doing, and what things should you continue doing. And I have a form that's very easy to guide you through this. And when you send your evaluations in, I will automatically send that out to you just so you can have it. You may already have something similar or better, but at least you'll have something additional. And the last thing, you want to execute the learning. It does no good to learn what mistakes you made and not correct them. It does no good to understand what things you did right or excellently and you don't repeat them. So once you examine the loss and extract the lesson, then you execute the learning. Prove it. That means go in and say, okay, now this is what I think really worked, let's try it. Practice it. Once you see that that thing really works, keep doing it. And then incorporate it into whatever it is that you're doing. Perform it with your clients. The first two parts are internal. The last one is external. Execute the learning. Don't just say, well, I think if we called them more often after, maybe if we called them 3 times after we completed the project as opposed to once, that might work. Well, practice it. See if that does increase your customer service rating or customer satisfaction rating. And I'm just using that as an example, but you want to prove it. And if that is, in fact, a key factor, you want to perform it. Keep doing it. Last thing, there's a secret. It was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who said, when you come to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. And for years, I thought that was the stupidest thing. I'm just going to be very honest with you. Like, why would you hang on to a rope when there's nothing else there? And then when I became an entrepreneur, I realized that there really was something else there. And it was this. It was hope. Holding on and persevering in expectancy. That's what was there. That's what you hold on to. No matter what else you lose, always hold on to the rope of hope. Yeah, you might get tired, like some of those guys did, and start walking away. But the next thing that I'm going to show you is what is going to make you be like the guy who stayed. Never, ever allow desire to take you where passion and purpose cannot sustain you. What do you think I mean by that? What do you think I mean when I say never allow desire to take you to a place where passion and purpose cannot sustain you? What are your thoughts on that statement? Please share.
I think passion and purpose are at a deeper level than desire. Desire is something that it's impinging on your emotions in your day-to-day moment in your state. Passion and purpose are sustainable, fundamental. That may
Okay.
be what you're thinking.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Passion and purpose are needs, and desire is a want. So
Okay.
I think that needs are deeper, they're more important than wants. Advertising never speaks to needs. Advertising speaks to wants.
Yes. Yes. Very good. You like hers?
You know, something I always tell startups I work with is that when you lose money, you haven't lost money. You have paid tuition. And put it down as that. You have paid to learn something.
That
So,
is
yeah.
perfect perspective. You've paid for a lesson. I learned a $4 lesson at UPS the other day. I went to return something, and they said, oh, this has to be packaged. We can't just take this. I said, but that's not what they told me on the paper. And she said, oh, yeah, well, it's got to be packaged. And I said, well, I'm not going back, so how much is it for you to package it? She said, oh, we got some bags for $4. I said, okay, give me one. She said, and then you can always call Amazon back and just tell them that you paid $4. And I said, no, ma'am. I said, this has been a $4 investment. I will not be calling Amazon to get a $4 refund. I've learned. Read everything and ask questions. But getting back to the desire is, you know, this is something I really like. I really want to do it, you know? But the first obstacle you run into, you stop. I love baking. I desire that. I even tried to sell my baked goods at one point. But then I realized the kitchen was hot and I didn't like sweating. And what became something that I enjoyed doing for my family became a chore. I didn't like it anymore. I had lost the desire. It was a fad for me. But then when I got into this business of connecting geographically dispersed families, when I got tired of seeing birthday parties and weddings where mothers of the bride were confined to nursing homes or confined to ICU units, when mothers were having babies and their babies were in one hospital and in a NICU and they were in another hospital 40 minutes away, and they wanted to see those babies. When I got to the point where I no longer wanted a pastor who was being taken care of by his daughter, he and his wife, in Iowa, but they were from St. Louis. The wife transitioned and they brought her back. And as they were bringing her out of the home, he said goodbye then because he didn't think he'd ever see her again. When I got tired of seeing that happen, and I was able to put him there so that he could have that last moment with his wife, just him and her, before everybody else started coming in. And then at the actual service, he got to sit on the front row in one of my robots, and he got to hear the choir sing. He got to see and tour a building that he had worked so hard to build, and he never got to see the finished product. But his grandsons were able to navigate that robot throughout that building, and he was able to see that. I'm getting chills as I talk about it even now, and it was years ago. That is passion. That is my purpose. My purpose is connecting families. In this day and age, with the technology that we have available, we shouldn't miss birthdays. We shouldn't miss births. We shouldn't miss anniversaries. We shouldn't miss opportunities to say our final goodbyes to people who love us and we love. Not today, and not with me. Yes, every time I get a no, like 2 weeks ago, back in September, a person called me and said, listen, we got this program going, we want you to apply for it. We think you're a good fit. I applied for it, the program started, I never heard back. I called them and they said, oh, we didn't select you. I've had times like that, and I've wanted to quit. Passion. You know, this, maybe I'm in the wrong business. You know, this, something's going on. But purpose taps me on the shoulder. Linda, you can moan and groan about this for about an hour. If you want to take a nap, if you want to get your head under the covers, you can do that for about 2 hours. But then we got to get a robot over to Children's Hospital. So do that, build a bridge and get over it, because we still have work to do. Purpose will keep you focused. Passion will keep you moving beyond your stopping point. So never, ever let a desire take you to a place where passion and purpose cannot sustain you. And as I close, I want to share with you some thoughts on purpose from the late Dr. Chadwick A. Boseman. If you saw Black Panther, you probably recognize him as T'Challa. But he was giving the commencement address in 2018 to Howard University, which was his alma mater. And these were his thoughts on purpose.
Is an essential element of you. It is the reason you are on the planet at this particular time in history. Your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Remember, the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose.
Were you able to hear that? Okay, somebody said they weren't. It's so important to me. I want to see if maybe I can increase my volume here, because I want you to hear the words he said about purpose. Let me see, I think I'm on max volume. If I'm not, I will be. Yeah, I'm on max volume, it looks like.
Maybe unplug it from here.
Okay.
And let's just do it through the computer, and I'll hold this.
Okay,
this
good. I want you to hear this.
Sometimes you need to feel the pain and sting of defeat to activate the real passion and purpose that God predestined inside of you. You would rather find purpose than a job or career.
Trying to find where the speaker is.
Purpose crosses disciplines.
In the back.
Purpose is an essential element of you. It is the reason you are on the planet at this particular time in history. Your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Remember, the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose.
That's okay. Let's try it one more time.
Sometimes you need to feel the pain and sting of defeat to activate the real passion and purpose that God predestined inside of you. Find purpose than a job or career. Purpose crosses disciplines. Purpose is an essential element of you. It is the reason you are on the planet at this particular time in history. Your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Remember, the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose.
That was Chadwick Boseman. And it was just an excerpt from the address he gave, the commencement address he gave to the graduating students at Howard University. But he was so on point with purpose. Purpose keeps you focused. Purpose keeps you moving. Purpose is what will make you get up every time you fall. I always tell people, and they think it's a crazy phrase, but it's my phrase, and I may be crazy. But if you ain't losing, you ain't learning. And if you ain't learning, you ain't living. I thank you all for your time, your attention, and your participation. At this time, the floor is open for questions.
How many robots do you have so far in operation?
In operation, 18, but I'm having them revamped. So they'll probably, what my goal is, working with the University of Michigan, is to be able to manufacture them and source them here in the United States. And so I'm hoping to have far more, because my goal is to actually have a manufacturing company here. So that's what they're doing for me. They're creating it out of parts that are manufactured here in the United States. I've already found another company here in the United States that can do the chip and the technical pieces that I need. And so I'm hoping to have a whole lot more than 18. Because the shipping industry, that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't ready for that to shut down. And I made a decision then that my robots were going to be made here and nowhere else. Any other questions? Thank you for asking. Any other comments?
Do you do this talk all over the country?
I have, this is about the third time that I've done it. Really, I hadn't planned on it. This was written out of frustration because I had lost a contest. And I had decided that I was quitting and I was gonna do all the stuff I shouldn't have done. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna paint a realistic picture instead of doing that,
Sure.
I'm gonna paint a realistic picture for people who are going through what I'm going through and help them deal with it. So I've done it 3 times.
This is absolutely something that startups need. I do a workshop on don't do this. 10 mistakes startups make, and to your point, startups need to make mistakes, but they should make their own, not the common ones.
Absolutely.
So learning from failure is huge, and all the entrepreneurship programs around. So you may consider turning this into a little book.
I do have an ebook that I'm putting together for it.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about some other speaker opportunities, I'm connected to some of the organizations. So.
I would welcome that, because I think we get the wrong picture, especially if we're on Instagram and Facebook. You know, the influencers are making it seem like it's so easy, and there is not a straight line to success, especially for startups. They need a realistic picture, and they need to know what that last slide said. Never let desire take you to a place where passion and purpose cannot keep you. What is your why for this business? Why are you doing it? You could ask me 10,000 times, and my answer will always be the same. I want to connect families. Family is important to me, and I want to connect families. So you lost a contest, you think you're going to, yes, because the contest doesn't define my purpose. Any other questions? Comments? It has been my pleasure to serve you. Thank you.